Welcome to the Legal Linkup Summer CLE Series. We want to thank you once again for being here. I'm Chris Burrell with the firm of Burrell McCants. So you may be wondering, what exactly is the Legal Linkup? Well, back in 2019, we got together because we love connecting with our friends and colleagues, and we hosted the first event. It was a networking mixer, firm launch, and appreciation day all rolled into one. It was a great opportunity for our friends to get to know each other over dinner and drinks. We had a great time that night, and we knew that we had started something very special that we wanted to keep going. So, how do we get here? Well, in 2020, because we couldn't gather because of the COVID pandemic, we sent out a little postcard to let everybody know that we were thinking about them. And because we were doing so much on Zoom, we also sent out a cell phone stand as a small gift. Now it's 2021, and although things are getting back to normal, we still felt that this virtual CLE would be a great way for us to connect and enhance all of our practices even more. So that's how we got here at this year's Legal Linkup Summer CLE Series, brought to you by the firm of Burrell McCants. And on behalf of my law partner, Burrell McCants, I'd like to thank you all for being here. Today we have a great CLE lined up. It's going to be, the title is, Securing the Bag, Avoiding Pitfalls While Building Your Practice. And we have a great presenter. This is Eric Guster. He's with the Guster Law Firm here in Birmingham. Guster's been in practice for almost 20 years now. He's a famous, he's a TV and political analyst. We've seen him all on the news locally and nationally on Fox, CNN, CNBC, all of those stations, giving his legal and political commentary. He's also the owner of Guster Law Firm and has locations in Birmingham and Bessemer. So today he's going to share with us about his experience in building his firm and avoiding those pitfalls that so many people have fallen into. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Guster. Now, before he jumps in, I want to remind everybody that after the CLE, you will receive a survey. Please fill out that survey and attest that you attended the CLE virtually so that you can receive credit with the state bar. And also, today's CLE is approved for that all-important 1 hour of ethics credit that's required every year. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Guster. Guster, take it away.
Thank you very much, Chris. I appreciate you all attending the CLE. One thing I pride myself in is trying to reach out and be available to lawyers who are building their practices, learning what to do, learning what not to do. And once upon a time, I used to teach the CLE as part of the criminal defense bar, where you would get appointed to the cases, and I would talk to lawyers and be able to get them and talk to them and really put some nuggets in them. But I stopped doing that a few years ago, and this opportunity presented itself, and I'm so excited. For the first 10-ish or so minutes, I'm going to talk about several points that I constantly try to share with particularly younger lawyers about securing, getting your practice growing well, and not getting in trouble. The first thing that I like to say is every 5 years, there's a cycle of lawyers that come and go. They're blazing trails, wide open, killing it. Then somebody does something stupid and loses their license. And that's what we want to prevent. And so many licensees get in trouble for doing absolutely ridiculous and stupid things that it's important that, I think we're getting feedback from your cell phone link, Chris. They get in trouble for doing some things. I want to touch on some of those. And also, you can type your questions. I do very well with questions. So type your questions in the message box, and I will answer those specific questions because I want to talk about what you want me to talk about. The first thing, your license is gold. That's something that a lot of lawyers don't really think about. Many lawyers don't. Your license is gold. So you have to protect it like it is gold. Your friends, people, your family, people who may ask you to do some things. Hey man, if you just sign this little thing, or this it's easy money, you can do this. Be very mindful of those people, because all it takes is one instance where you put your name on something that is shady, that is illegal, that is unethical, and they will tag your license, meaning they will suspend you 45, 90 days, or you'll be disbarred. And like I said at the beginning of this seminar, it hurts me to read about people I've known who get in trouble, especially things that could have been avoided. The next thing in reference to your license being gold is making sure you protect your trust account. Now, I'm old school on this thought, but I've always had my trust account at a totally different bank than where I normally bank. People are like, why you do that? Because if your trust account, if you bounce a check in your trust account or something is wrong with your trust account, then the bar is automatically notified. And you can come down and say, oh man, let me tell you my records, I made a mistake. That's not going to help you much. So what I've done for the last 20 years is I've had my IOLTA account at a totally separate bank. That way, I never make a mistake of depositing a check that belongs in my trust account in the wrong account. Because you're running, going to court, going here, going there. Oh, I mean, you drop this, we had this settlement check, need to drop it in the bank. And if you bank with Regions, you have 5 accounts and you make a mistake, or the teller makes a mistake and puts it in the wrong account, then boom, you write checks out of your trust account and that your checks bounce, you're in trouble. And it's a long way to get out of that trouble, because what happens with the bar, if they get the notice that you bounced a trust account check, which IOLTA checks are supposed to be like cashier's checks, the equivalent of them. And if they do not clear, they get notification and then they go through all of your records. And nobody wants that. So it's very wise to consider at least putting your IOLTA at a bank that you don't normally bank with. That way, it is a separate, totally separate thing. Also on your trust account, no matter what, this is back to the treating your license like gold, no matter what happens, never dip in your trust account to try to pay your bills. Never dip into your trust account because you're behind on rent or you need money to pay your credit cards or whatever it is. When you start doing that, and I have seen people who've gotten in that hole, it's very hard to get out. Because if you start dipping $100, another $200, another $300, then the time that the work you have to do to really put that money back is going to catch up with you, and then you'll be in trouble. Because the bar is very specific about you only, the IOLTA account is for money that you do not own. So if you are using your client's funds for something of your personal business, you will get pinged, and it's not pretty. The next thing about growing your practice is managing your expenses. It's very easy, especially in the age of social media, where you see somebody with flashy new car, or they take a picture in front of this wonderful vacation. Oftentimes people are trying to catch up and keep up with people who are actually putting out a false narrative themselves. So be very mindful about your expenditures, and don't worry about the Joneses. Don't worry about your law school classmate who just bought a brand new Corvette and, man, I'm not doing well because this person's doing well. You really don't know what that person's doing. You really don't know what that person's expenses are. You don't even know if they own that car. And I've seen that through a couple of people I've mentored, and I've talked to them about it. And the reality check hit them that you're trying to keep on this hamster wheel, trying to keep up with some images that simply don't exist. And that is what gets a lot of lawyers in trouble, because we're trying to keep up with everybody else. We're trying to get the new Porsche or the new Jaguar or the new Corvette or the new Mercedes. And the mentality about it is, some people say, well, I have to have this image. People don't know what you drive. Your clients don't know what you drive. You're buying things to impress people who really don't even matter. The wealthiest people I know they sometimes have mobile cars. They drive their old car where they're going. They don't want people to know that they have the money. So be very mindful of that and not keeping up with the Joneses. In growing your practice, it's very important it's difficult. I'll say it's difficult, where so many people take everything that comes in the door. That's a disaster waiting to happen. If you're taking bankruptcy, divorce, family court, criminal cases, a couple of appointed cases, a probate case, that's going to crash on you. And I know that, man, I need this money. And that's a factor, of course. But once you get that money, then you have to do the work. And you have to make sure that the work you're doing is right. You have to make sure that you are really up on the law, that you are current with the law and current with the litigation and current with the court rules on whatever area of practice that you practice in. Because if you make those mistakes, those are things that get you in the book, the bar book, for being in trouble. So start. I know I've seen the list of people who are in the seminar. Start developing what works well for you, what you make money doing, and also what makes you money and you enjoy, and then try to really develop those practice areas to make your money on. The next thing, employees. Oh my gosh, employees, managing people is a whole different thing. It's tough. So I say carefully hire and quickly fire. I was talking to a buddy a couple of weeks ago, and he said, "Man, Guster, I hear that you fire people in the heartbeat." I do. If someone is working in your business, and you have to remember, your law practice is a business. And a lot of lawyers don't think about it as a business. It's a whole business where you're paying payroll, you're paying rent, you're paying expenses. So you have to be very mindful of those expenditures in which you are paying out every month or every year. So in employees, that check hits every 2 weeks. So it's very important to really take your time in choosing employees and be mindful of what that person will do and have very specific roles for that person. And if that person does not pan out, give them a probationary period. If that person is not good for your practice, let them go. And don't have any regrets about letting someone go that doesn't fit, because it's your money that you're spending, and that person must aid your practice and help your practice grow. The next thing, which goes back to your license's gold, is protecting your name. Your name is all you got. Your name is all you have. Your name is all you have in these streets. And you have to be very careful about who you attach your name to, the cases that you attach your name to, the types of practicing you attach your name to, and be very mindful that those things last pretty much forever. So when you're making decisions about partnering with someone, for example, or going into a case with someone, make sure their reputation is one of strength and integrity that you want to be attached to. Because that, says if you rub somebody covered in tar, you're gonna have a little bit on you too. Be very mindful about those things, because your name is everything. And I can't think of a better way to say it, but don't do shady stuff. Don't start cutting off lawyers at the knees. Don't steal. Don't do criminally negligent activities. It's very important that you protect your name. And the last thing, before we go to the questions, I know Chris has some questions, and if anyone watching has some questions, type them now. Never do anything that you don't want the bar to know about. That's in your accounting, that's in your practice, that's in any aspect of your practice. Never do anything that the bar, you don't want them to know about, because the way that the bar complaints work, I sat on the committee, when the bar complaint is filed against you, and if it passes the initial screening level, they have subpoena power. They can subpoena your records. They can order you to bring all your files. They can walk into your office and say, hey, I'm going to come in to inspect all your files. I need the last 12 months of your bank statements. And that's something that we did. If a lawyer had questionable spending in their IOTA account, I would subpoena their bank statements, all copies of the canceled checks, and then get copies of all their settlements. Say, wait, now this settlement, you were supposed to receive $3,000. Why did you receive $5,000? That goes back to taking money that's not yours. There are ways that accountants and lawyers who have an experience in that can determine if something is awry with your accounting. And that's why it's very important to make sure you don't do that. Those are my initial points, Chris. And I know we wanted the seminar to be more of a discussion, because Chris Burrell and I, we talk all the time about everything. When he started his practice, well, not really. So, yeah, when we started your practice, I think we started talking. And the good thing about Chris and I, he shares the newer stuff with me, share with the old man, you know, and then I share other knowledge with him based upon experience. And it's very important to find mentors and people who are doing what you want to do, who will share information with you, and be open to sharing information with them, because it goes both ways. The lawyers I mentor, they teach me a lot. Like, I'm over here saying, what? Hold on, Calendarly, what is that? You know, where you can set up appointments online. So, and I teach them the old school way of doing things and the business way, and banking and finance and those types of things. However, they share a lot of technology with me. So it's important to share the information back and forth. And remember that everyone who's on the seminar is not your competition. The competition are the larger firms who are sucking up all the business and taking it from our community. So we have to be very mindful that Chris is not my competition. Anybody on this call right now is probably legit not my competition. I want all of us to do well so that we all continue to do well. And once we get that mindset that if Chris Burrell's firm continues to grow, it helps Guster Law Firm. As Guster Law Firm continues to grow, it helps Burrell McCants. So we have to start retooling ourselves to not look at each other necessarily as competition, but start collaborating and sharing ideas, because there are a lot of clients out here. There are a lot of cases out here. And it's our job to teach each other how to do better and how to get our fair share of the cases and prevent these larger firms who are really stealing them all from getting all the cases. So what questions did you have for me, Chris? And if there are any questions in the chat, we can do that too.
Okay. All right. So first of all, again, everyone, we want this to really be interactive. So as Eric was saying, he does really well with questions and everything. Please drop your questions in the Q&A section, or if you just have to, put it into the chat section as well. We're going to be monitoring both of those to make sure that we get your questions asked. Eric, back to what you were talking about. It's funny, as you started transitioning, you touched on my very first question, which was going to be about mentorship. So let me just take this quick moment to brag on Eric. I mean, he's a great mentor for me. Like you said, I've been in practice for 11 years now, and I've been calling him since day one. I text him in the middle of a trial. I mean, call him, you know, I try not to call him as much now late at night because he's got a young baby. But, you know, the point of me saying that is I've always valued mentorships. So, Eric, can you talk a little bit about, well, you've already talked about how important mentorships is, but how important mentorships are. But can you also kind of talk about, one, how do you go about identifying a mentor? And two, how do you go about developing that relationship with someone that you want to be your mentor?
That's tough. I've talked to a couple of lawyers, and some have had trouble finding mentors because the older lawyers say, hey, call me for lunch, and then they never return their calls. It's really identifying someone who you want the direction of your practice and your business to go similarly to theirs. And someone who has integrity, someone who handles their business, and someone you want to be like. And it's nothing wrong with reaching out to someone, shooting them an email saying, hey, you know, I watched you. I really like to talk to you, a phone call, a lunch, or conversation. That's how you do it. When I was coming up, I harassed the heck out of Emory Anthony. I was a criminal defense trial lawyer. And I knew where Emory ate breakfast every day. He's a routine. He used to eat breakfast at one spot every day at 7:30. I'd be there at 7 o'clock, waiting on him, sitting there in the corner. We looking like the Gambinos in Brooklyn or something, sitting there in the corner waiting on him. And I paid for his breakfast. He wouldn't allow me to most of the time, but I knew where he would be. And he always said, no, if you want something, just come up here. So I'd be there at 7 o'clock waiting on him. And once you identify that mentor, speak honestly to them, and also be respectful of their time. the worst thing that a person can do if someone is wanting something from you is to waste your time. If a mentor tells you to be there at 7:30, have your butt there at 7:15. Be waiting on that person. Don't have them waiting on you. Don't text them, hey, I'm running a few minutes late. No, that doesn't fly. You need something from that person. And I have mentors now in the real estate development industry that I'm in as well. If they tell me to be somewhere at 6 a.m., I'm there at 5:15, 5:30, just in case I have a flat tire, just in case I'm running late or whatever. I try to be there early and I try to honor and respect their time. So don't be afraid to reach out to people. And remember, people are going to tell you no, and it's okay. They're going to say, I'm too busy, and that's okay. But every no that you go through, you're closer to that yes of the person who you could link up with, who could be a great mentor and asset, because the older lawyers and more experienced lawyers, they want the new ones to help them with technology, for example, or just like the Zoom video where a dude was in a cat. He needed somebody 30 years old to tell him how to not be a Zoom cat on his court hearing. But honor their time and reach out to them. Don't be afraid of a no. And speaking of no's, lawyers, we're very prideful, and in law school, you're taught to know everything. If you don't know everything, you're an idiot. Assume you know nothing when you're reaching out to someone. Don't tell them, oh, I know that. Because let me tell you how I reach out to my mentors. I play golf with a guy who runs a bank. And we were talking about some real estate deals I'm working on. And he was like, well, I'm sure you know this. I don't know nothing. Talk to me like I'm third grade educated and explain this to me like I know nothing. Because if you tell someone you know something, then they may skip nuggets that are very worthwhile for you to learn. So go in there with a clean slate and listen and share information if they ask you to share.
Gotcha. That's great information. And I echo everything you said about Emory Anthony. I remember, I think you were the one that told me I needed to talk to him. But I remember my first year of practice, I approached Mr. Anthony about, I heard he used to do like a mentoring session, kind of walking everybody through criminal defense cases. I asked him if he wouldn't mind talking to me about it. He was like, no, you young lawyers don't listen and all this kind of stuff. So he challenged me. He told me if I got 10 people to meet him on a Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, that he would do it. I got 15. and he actually took an entire Saturday and walked us from start to finish talking about criminal defense cases. So that's just one of the examples of the fact that, one example of how great of a man Mr. Anthony is, and we appreciate him. But secondly, it just shows that if you're persistent and you, like as Eric was saying, if you honor your mentor's time and you make it easier for them to actually assist you, that you're more likely to get people to help you. So that's a great story, Eric.
If the mentor has to work to help you,
absolutely,
they're not going to help you.
Absolutely.
If I have to do work to help somebody, what the hell am I doing this for? Don't make it difficult on me to help you. Make it easy. Then, oh yeah, let me call Chris back. Let me call Chris back and help him with this, and I'll talk to you for 2 hours. But make it easy for your mentor to help.
Gotcha. All right, so we got a couple of questions coming in. I'm gonna go ahead and get those fired off. One question is, I've been thinking about hiring someone to help with the work, but this pandemic has me hesitant. What is the ticket for your average assistant? And I know that's kind of a vague question, but we'll just say, like, if you were a small man firm, a 1 or 2 man firm, and you were going to hire an assistant, what would be the average ticket, as Jeremy says here?
Ooh, man, I would say look on Indeed.com, and on Indeed, and look in the job postings, and then you can see what the different firms are offering for experience levels. That's kind of how I've done it over the years. But you can hire someone. I've seen people $10, $12 up to 18, depending on experience. Well, actually more than 18, depending on their experience. And if you're hiring someone, a lot of it will depend on that person's experience level. How hands-on do you have to be in supervising that person? And you need to really take them through a vetting process to make sure that that person is what you need in your practice. Now, someone can have the best the best resume in the world, but they may not fit exactly what you need in your practice. So if you're practicing, say, criminal defense law, and someone says, well, I worked at Guster shop and I did personal injury, that may not be the right person, because that person knows car wrecks but doesn't know the first thing about criminal. But I stopped doing criminal work about 8-9 years ago, so no one in my recent history has practiced criminal law from my office. So I would look on Indeed.com, and that's a great way to see. You can see the firm's name, the application part, and see what everybody's paying and get a good idea. I mean, if you look at, for example, Shannara always has postings. They'll be from $12 an hour to $18. And so, and even for the similar experience. So it's kind of that's a very tough question, but a lot of it is based upon experience.
Gotcha. And that's a great response, and a lot of good insight there, Eric. But also, I would actually add to that, Jeremy. Also, make sure that you factor into what you can actually pay. I mean, don't go overextending yourself. And from my own experience, when I think I was in my 3rd year practice, I had a lady come to me from California, and she talked about how she had worked for this firm in Beverly Hills and blah 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 blah, and she wanted $20 an hour, and I just couldn't afford it. I mean, so initially we did part-time. I couldn't even afford the part-time, so I just had to let her go. But my point is, make sure that you factor into what you can pay, and hopefully you can find somebody that fits, that has skill and experience and is a good worker, but also is comfortable with what your budget is, and make sure you have a budget. So that's probably the biggest thing that I would add to that as well.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Chris. And budgeting is very important, because your employers are going to be looking for their money every 2 weeks, whether you settle cases, whether you get retained or not. And there's a book, Richest Man in Babylon. This is a great book to read, okay? One of the things in Richest Man in Babylon they talk about is duplicating yourself. So when you hire people, you want that person to be able to duplicate your efforts. I think it was Richest Man in Babylon who talked about this. I read a lot of these types of books, okay? And I think it was Richest Man in Babylon that discussed this, duplicating your efforts, so that if you are in court, that person is getting retainer signed, or meeting people and getting your retainer fees, or filing the necessary motions, but just not sitting at your office playing on their computer and on Facebook and Twitter. You have to make sure that the person is duplicating your efforts. And like Chris said, which is really the most important thing, make sure you can afford them. If you can't afford the help, then don't get it. But also, you have to be able to look at what the benefit of that help will be in growing your practice and being able to duplicate yourself to make more money.
Absolutely. And that's a great point as well, because one of the things that I noticed that the person asking that question, they said they were hesitant because of the pandemic. Well, if you factor in, if you're able to do other stuff, and if it's going to benefit you to have somebody there, obviously you want to have a certain level of caution, but at the same time, you can kind of weigh those things as to whether or not it'd be beneficial for you to bring somebody in. So be sure you look at it from that perspective as well. All right, so another important question that we hadn't discussed yet was malpractice insurance. Mr. Banks asked, what's some good malpractice insurance policies to have?
I went with AIM. There are a lot of malpractice insurance carriers out there. I did not compare rates when I went with AIM, just being totally transparent. I was like, man, I'm getting all these people. I need to make sure I have some good malpractice insurance. So I went with AIM. That's kind of a Alabama base. It's Alabama based. They're right over there in Hoover. They were easy to work with. They underwrote my policies, and it's very good to have malpractice insurance. There are several theories on malpractice insurance. I'm going to share those with you. Some people say if you don't have malpractice insurance, you can't get sued. Well, suppose you get this gazillion-dollar case, and then someone sues you for malpractice and you don't have coverage. Suppose you have real estate that you have that they can attach to your judgments. So be very mindful of that, because a guy who's now a retired judge, when I first started practicing, said, don't get malpractice insurance, because as long as you ain't got nothing, they can't sue you. But there are going to be lawyers who will want to sue you if you mess up, and they will make your life hell. And at minimum, you need somebody to defend the lawsuit. And you'll have to pay out of pocket by the hour for someone to defend the lawsuit. and you don't want to do it yourself because only a fool represents himself. So out of pocket, you're going to have to pay for that coverage. But I use AIM, and there are a lot of carriers out there now. That's just who I use.
Gotcha. I would actually add to that as well. Look at who you already have insurance with. So if you have any type of premises liability insurance, or even your own personal automobile insurance or life insurance, you should look to those as well. So, you can possibly bundle packages and all of those things. Also, I just realized that we actually have an insurance agent on this CLE. That's Miss LaQuisha Fisher. She's with Acceptance Insurance, and she's a personal friend of mine and also a business colleague of mine. I do a lot of business with Miss Fisher, especially referring clients, because one of the things that we do is we help people get their driver's license back, and she helps insure some of our clients. So LaQuisha's actually on. And I think she just made a comment, but she would be a great person to talk to. That's LaQuisha Fisher, and she's with Acceptance Insurance. I'm going to see if I can possibly make her a co-host or something so she can come on and maybe give us a quick greeting and help share her information.
Let's see. She wrote about good errors and omission insurance. What's good errors and omission insurance? Even though our job provides it, it's been known that it may not be enough, so I just actually took out some to cover me if anything were to happen. Like I have an umbrella policy as well, because if I do something really, really bad, I want to make sure I'm covered. Because in the land of lawsuits, people typically stop at where the insurance coverage is. But once you start growing and growing and growing, getting assets and buying buildings and houses and things like that, some lawyers may want to tag that as a source as well. So it's very important to have some good insurance. And that's an expense that I would encourage you to not go without, because it protects you, and you need to be protected. And you don't want to worry about something like, oh man, I messed this case up a year ago. Are they going to tag me in the next 12 months? You don't want to worry about that.
Hey, LaQuisha, I really appreciate you joining us. And since she's here, this is a great opportunity for us to go ahead and share her information. I'm putting it in the chat as well. But LaQuisha, if you can hear us, can you go ahead and make just give us a quick greeting introduction and let us know how we can get in touch with you?
Oh, okay. My name is LaQuisha. I work with Acceptance Insurance. I've been doing insurance for 21 years. So feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions on that. I can do my very best. And if there's something that I can't help with, I know where to go.
All right, LaQuisha, what's the phone number they can use to reach you?
It's 205-424-2810.
All right. Thanks again for joining us. We appreciate it. All right. So, Guster, you were just talking about malpractice insurance and all of those things, and which takes me to another point. We know that bar complaints, one of the number one complaints that people get is about non-communication. Can you talk to us a little bit about the best ways and the best practices to communicate with clients to help avoid those bar complaints and just unhappy clients in general?
It's very important to have calendars where you communicate with a client at least every 60 days, long way. I say every month is the optimal, or every 2 weeks if you have a lot of ongoing things. The best thing about now with the new technology, I call email new. In our practice world, email is relatively new from last 19, 20 years. Email is free, is cheap, and is easy. Calendar yourself to email a client and give them a quick update. It's tough talking to people all the time. I am not one who loves to be on the phone. And that's part of the people who you hire. If you hire someone, whether part-time or full-time, it may be their job to give clients an update. For example, in our office, we have specific people who call clients to give them updates. If they have an issue that needs to be handled by a lawyer, then we handle that. But make sure your client gets some type of communication from your office at least once a month, maximum every 2 months. With litigation, for example, they may not need an update as often. but send them an email, and also make sure that you email a copy to yourself or a file so that you have a copy of that, because that is one of the top bar complaints. And secondly, on the bar complaints that you mentioned, Chris, when the bar sends you that letter with the red letters, what is it, personal and confidential, do not ignore it. Yeah. Don't do the Al Bundy and leave it in the mailbox or put it on the shelf that I ain't gonna worry about this. You have to respond. When I was on the committee, that was the worst thing you could do, is not respond. And before you respond, call somebody who's been around for a while and ask them how to properly respond. Oh my gosh, when I was on the committee several years ago, the guy's response got him in more trouble. I forgot what the issue was, but we read a response like, does this dude actually write this? He actually told on himself. And not about that, but about something else. I can't remember the exact thing that it was, Chris, but he told on himself in the response. So when you respond to the bar and you get that letter, reach out to someone who's been around. You can reach out to me, reach out to Chris, say, hey, I got this letter, what I need to do. And you make sure you respond, because I have an email address of the paralegal who you need to respond to. So make sure you communicate with them fast. Say, hey, I got your letter. Give me an extra 14 days. I'm gathering my documents or getting advice on this. But reach out to them, because ignoring them, that's a kiss of death. And Absolutely. You see it in the book all the time. People, oh, this person didn't respond, so we just barred them. What the hell? All you gotta do is write them back. And write them back and go to somebody who's been around. And if a lawyer's been practicing any amount of time, especially criminal defense, you've had bar complaints. I mean, I used to get one every 6 months. I mean, once somebody, you can fight for somebody, you can keep, and they go to prison, they lifting weights, eating food, and writing bar complaints. So that's all they're doing at the house. At the big house. So it's very important that you get the response. And some of the bar complaints are like stupid, meaning that they're just people who just fussing. Eric Guster didn't fight for me, I end up in prison. Well, you robbed the bank. And I got you down from 10 years to 5 and you're still mad, but you still have to respond to that. And you have to respond with a response that is adequate, that hopefully gets the complaint phased out and closes the case before they even really open one.
Gotcha. And actually, Gus, let me ask a follow-up question to that. Would you say that it's best when you're responding to bar complaints to leave out the emotional and the extra, commentary, and just stick to the facts about your interaction with that client? And also, if there's some law that supports your position as well?
Yeah, stick to the facts. Leave the emotion. Never. Well, let me just back up. Never write when you're emotional. Work and emotions don't happen. It's not you texting your cousin who said something stupid. You always been stupid your whole life. And don't forget, I kept you out that fight in 8th grade. You have to leave the emotions at home. So when you're responding to the bar complaints, it's very important to stay on task with what the complaint is about. When you read that complaint, see what it's about. It's just like doing a case. I always made copies. I highlighted what the complaint about, and then I would reply. Number 1, this client agreed to the guilty plea. Number 2, his rights were read to him. Number 3, he admitted guilt. And then just send it to them, or whatever the complaint is. And like you mentioned, Chris, leave the emotions out of it, because you start getting to the commentary of this guy's stupid or this is ridiculous. It's kind of like the one that I mentioned earlier. You can sometimes talk yourself into more problems, because if you are adversarial in your writing to the bar, they're going to look at it like, I see why this person's complaining, because look how this person is acting with us. So if they act a fool with me being the person who can decide whether this complaint is open and they may lose their license for 30, 45, 90 days or forever, imagine what they do with this little client over here. So be very mindful of that mindset. And like I said, get someone's advice. I've helped several lawyers with their bar complaint answers and get them a little red pen out and be like, heck no, don't write this. Because you have to make sure that you're right. And keep in mind, the bar is there to protect the public. And we have to be much more careful in how we respond and make sure we respond very well and succinctly to whatever it is.
Gotcha. Thanks again for answering that question. So again, I want to remind everybody and encourage you all to go ahead and submit your questions. I mean, we still got a couple of minutes left in this CLE, and again, we want to be interactive. So if you have questions that you're just burning to get an answer to, go ahead and submit those in the Q&A section. Or if you just can't work that feature, go ahead and put them in the chat section. We will make sure we monitor all of it to get your question asked. So Eric, you were talking about responding to bar complaints and kind of interacting with the bar. So I want to take that and just kind of shift our focus a little bit to marketing. And I also want to ask that question from a perspective of how do you go about, or do you have a procedure in your office for when you have a new marketing idea or campaign or whatever the case may be, how do you run that by the bar, or can you just kind of speak to advertising and marketing regulations that we have to meet as it relates to the bar?
Make sure that you read the rules on marketing probably 5 or 10 times before you start marketing, because that's one of the ways that a lot of people get in trouble, because people will snitch on you. They will, back in the day, I'm the old man at the bar now. We have yellow pages, right? And I did yellow pages ad, and it was a yellow book. They had yellow page, yellow book. Yellow book did not put my disclaimer. Somebody cut it out and sent it to the bar. And I was like, oh man, I told them to, and they didn't. And they cleared it out, said, don't do it again. So when people see your advertisements, they're going to snitch on you. And so make sure that you run it by the bar. It's very advisable to run it by the bar as you're learning what to do sometimes. Say, hey, what do y'all think about this? Because that way is kind of a preeminent, let me check in with you. I don't know who's over that division now, Chris, because I know what not to do. But I used to, at the time, I used to reach out to the bar like all the time. Say, hey, I'm thinking about this. Is this okay? To the point where they probably got on their nerves a little bit. But my goal was to make sure I protected my license, which is what I told you at the very beginning. Protect your license. So reach out to people who can get you in trouble, who actually administer the justice if you do something wrong, and make sure something is okay before you do it, instead of asking for forgiveness. Because they say asking for forgiveness is better than permission, not with the bar. Asking for permission first and make sure that you're clear on it.
Gotcha. All right. That's great information. So let me ask you this. Since we're still talking about marketing, not necessarily from the bar perspective, you gave a great response to that question or that aspect of it. But let me just ask you more from a personal standpoint. Can you tell us about the worst marketing experience that you've had and help us avoid that pitfall?
Man, I have done everything, bro. This is like me and Chris. Now I'm talking like we talk on the phone. Man, Winn-Dixie. This is hilarious. Winn-Dixie used to have those little tapes, the little receipts, and I advertised on the back of the receipts of the Winn-Dixies, and that was the worst. I could have just gotten a lighter and put several $100s in kerosene and lit it on fire. It was horrible. You will always make mistakes in marketing. The fortunate thing for you all is that the internet is very prevalent. You have social media and things like that. And that marketing is kind of free. You can do Facebook Live videos. You can put out statuses to your 2,000 followers or 5,000 followers. So it's free. So you don't have to risk as much. When I was coming up, you had to do TV, yellow pages, or billboards, or try the receipts at the Winn-Dixies or something else. Oh man, that was horrible.
I've never heard this story before, man. That's hilarious.
That's why I kept laughing, because man, I had these receipts, and I went to Winn-Dixie. I need to buy some, make sure my name on the back of these receipts. I ain't get no phone calls. But the reality of marketing is you will try things that just won't work. Now, with marketing, you do have to be mindful that things take time. You can't put a Facebook ad on, get no calls. I'll pull this off in 5 days. It takes time and repetition for people to know who you are, then for the event to happen. For example, if you are doing criminal defense, and you're posting on Facebook, criminal defense, criminal defense. I ain't got no calls in a week. Well, somebody got to get arrested before they call you first, right? So you want your name to be repetitive in that market that you're targeting, in hopes that when that event happens, they call you. Just like car wrecks. You put out a car wreck, you wait on somebody to get a car wreck and call you. That's what Shannara did with his 5011 billboards. It was name recognition that helped Shannara, because I remember when Shannara really started his marketing campaign around 2005, he was competing with Goldberg. It was Goldberg and Morris Bart. Morris Bart left. This is an old man talking. You know. Morris Bart left when the first recession happened. So it was Morris Bart, Goldberg, and Shannara. Then Morris Bart left. Then Shannara ramped up his advertising. Then he bought all the billboards. So it was name recognition, kind of a name recognition fight. Then came in Morris, Morgan and Morgan, all those other people. But again, it's name recognition. You will lose some money, and try to track. Have your staff to track where your business comes from, or use the Google Analytics to know you're getting calls or not, and ask people who do well in those areas how they track those things. Because if you're spending money, you can't track it, even with your staff who you're paying that $12 to $18 an hour. Have them ask the question, where did you hear about me? Or how did you hear about me? That's one of our first intake questions. How did you hear about me? Because that's important for me, because I need to know whether it came from a lawyer, or whether it came from a Wendy's, a receipt, or whether it came from a board or Facebook or whatever. Find out where they heard about you so you can track it and see if that marketing is working. And after 6 months, if it's not working, you may decide to tweak it or change it.
Gotcha. All right. Well, thanks for that information. Appreciate it. All right. So we got another question here from an attendee. Political season is approaching. Can you drop some nuggets on do's and don'ts? Example that she used was someone who's running for judge. So can you kind of give us some insight on that here?
Whew, man. Politics is a strange area, and all the judges are going to have their 900 host committee members and all that. For years, I did not put my name on any of those lists, unless it was someone I was very close to. I did not put my names on any of those lists. Even I'm recently campaigning, helping Woodfin with his reelection, but for the last 12, 16 years, I did not get involved in the mayor's campaigns. That's a personal decision. And people say, well, you need to give every judge $100 or whatever. And I don't necessarily say you shouldn't, but before, I'm trying to think of the judge I gave money to, I didn't give any of them any money for a very long time, unless I was really promoting them. Quick story. When Judge Ross ran her first time, that was a judge who, man, have I told that story? When Katrina Ross ran, Judge Cahill retired. Ooh, this is an old man story. Judge Cahill retired, and they were going to give the judgeship to Ken Gomney. Katrina Ross was a very good friend and ally of mine. She said, I want to run for district court. I was like, Katrina, let's go do it. Everybody ignored Katrina Ross. We went to the Birmingham criminal defense lawyers meeting. They turned their back on her. Went to bar meeting, turned their back on her. Then she won. And I was like, well, you know me, Chris. I like, the hell with all the people who ignored you. You need to be cussing them all out. But she was like, no, I'm going to forgive them. I said, the hell with forgiving them. You need to cuss all the people out who turned their back on you, because that was disrespectful. But that's an example of supporting someone who was my friend and who I believed in and I knew would do a great job. Because oftentimes in political season, especially in the legal industry, this is a whole conversation right here. Lawyers and judges get in this little bubble of greatness where so-and-so is a great judge and I'm sure he or she will be elected. Not necessarily, because the lawyers make up 0.0001% of the population, and you need the people of the county to vote for you. So it's a personal decision on that. And that's all I can give you on that one.
Very cool. That's great insight. Yeah, I would also add to that. Just remember that you don't necessarily have to be on somebody's host committee in order to support their campaign. So when like you said, with the 900 host committee members, when their material comes out, they're going to list everybody who's on their host committee. If you don't want your name out there, you can always just say, well, look, I'll not rather be on the host committee, but I will make a contribution to your campaign. That way you still get to kind of engender that favor with them, but not necessarily putting yourself out there as being, associated or even, given the perception that you're closely associated with them. So I would add that.
Because oftentimes they'll get those host committees, they'll get that host committee list very, very early. And then your homegirl from Parker High School is about to run,
Exactly.
and you're on somebody's host committee, they're running again. So I oftentimes tell people no, they just quit asking me at this point.
Yeah, but I did that same thing. I was on somebody's host committee one time, and then a judge that I really liked called me and was like, hey, I'm running for this spot. And I was like, uh-oh, I'm on the host committee. My name is out there. I'm in the pictures and all this kind of stuff. So it just, it doesn't make you look good, because now it kind of looks like you're wishy-washy or whatever the case may be. But like I said, if you want to support somebody, you can always make a contribution without necessarily being on the host committee and, being up front. We're going to shift back into practice questions a little bit. We got another question about someone who does personal injury. He says that, how do you deal with clients wanting their money as soon as they know we have settled? Well, I'm going to piggyback on that question. I'm going to ask, how do you deal with clients just wanting their money in general? Like when they leave your office signing the fee agreement, how do you deal with that? How do you help manage their expectations?
I want my money. I want it now. I mean, they got a rent. Everybody telling them, man, you got to get paid. So it's just managing expectations and telling them it's going to be 30 days or 45 days likely that we can get you your money. For example, in our office, we have a holding period in our IOLTA account for 10 days before we disperse. The reason that, and several other firms do that as well. The reason I do that is because sometimes if you sign the back of a check wrong, it bounces back, or they may reject it. So we put things in place to make sure that we don't get that IOTA account trouble. That's the thing that we put in place, but you have to just manage your expectations. And for example, if you know that a case is settling and it's going to take the adjuster to send you 2 weeks to send the check to you, just like it'll be 2 weeks or it'll be 4 weeks, depending on whatever rules that you have in reference to how you disperse. Make sure those rules are written so that your legal assistant, your paralegal, somebody you hire next week will know what those rules are and be able to tell them. And also ask the adjuster if they'll overnight it. Get you a FedEx account or FedEx account and say, if you can't overnight it, charge to my account, it costs you $30. If it's a decent amount check, that's actually a case expense that you can charge to the client if you wish. Oftentimes we just eat that, but ask the adjuster, hey, can you overnight this to me? Because my client getting on my nerve real bad and need to get this money to them. And sometimes they will. The adjusters, they're in large companies, it ain't their money. So sometimes they'll just overnight it to you because you were nice. And speaking of adjusters, be very nice to the adjusters. Don't be a jerk.
Absolutely.
Don't be a jerk. I've had people who worked for me before where I've had adjusters say, oh, that person on this case, we're cool, we're gonna settle it. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Because that person was talking crazy to them, and the adjuster has the power. So, I'm segueing off your original question, but be kind to the adjuster. And once you get a rapport, they'll say, oh yeah, you want me to go and overnight this? Yes. So I can have this check tomorrow, and I can put it in the bank that is on a separate bank from my operating account, so I can disperse these funds quickly.
Yeah, I agree. Also, one thing I would add to that is also just let the client know that you're doing it for their protection. Like let them know exactly the scenario that Eric just talked about, how sometimes they can be chargebacks and all that kind of stuff. Now, of course, we know from a practical standpoint, if they get that check, they're going to be gone. But just let them know, like, look, we have to hold it for a certain amount of days, and that's for your protection and ours, blah, blah, blah. And let them know that, there are certain things outside of your control. Hey, we'll deposit the check as soon as we get it, all this kind of stuff. But, we do need to make sure it clears and all this kind of things. So that's one way you can help kind of manage the expectations as well.
Right. And even along those lines, the easiest thing you can say is just like your bank holds out-of-state checks for 14 days, mine does too. No, okay. and managing those expectations, you're going to have clients who make horrible decisions. We had a guy 3 weeks ago. It was a case that Cornelius and I had, Chris. This dude got $70,000 and he cashed his check. Bro, you walk around with 70 grand in 10s, 20s, and 100s? Our clients don't make the best decision, but like I told him, I appreciate you using the Guster Law Firm. If anything else, call us again.
Yeah, you're right. I had a client did something very similar one time. Cashed a check at Easy Money. I was like, really? I would have charged you half of what they charged you if you just really wanted to do that bad. Yeah. All right, so we are close to the end of the hour, but we do have one question that I want to get to, and I think this may end up being our last question. Let's see, how do I get back to it? Yeah.
Was that from Lakeisha? I can read it.
Okay, yeah, all right, I'm sorry, I have it. All right. When starting your practice, do you suggest using your personal savings or business loan for startup costs? An example she gave was logo, website, business sale, stationery, etc. Do you suggest using your savings or getting a business loan in order to do that?
It's probably hard unless rules have changed. Probably difficult to get a business loan. Well, being a lawyer, the underwriting is a little bit easier. I use all of it. I reinvested a lot in my practice. I use a lot of personal money. I use my family loaned me a few dollars. I use any source of money that made sense. And that's why you have to be very good stewards of your money. Make sure that if you borrow money from someone, you make sure you pay them back. Banks, individuals, or whomever, make sure you pay them back. And reinvest in your practice. When you get that good settlement, reinvest in your practice, whether it's technology or marketing or buying some more equipment or putting some money back for a rainy day. Make sure you reinvest in your practice. A lot of people don't. They get a great settlement, then, oh, I'm about to go buy this Porsche over here. No. Well, there's nothing wrong with buying something that you want at a certain time, but you also need to reinvest in your business, because that's what most of the highly successful people do. They reinvest in their business in order to grow their business. And don't forget, your practice is a business first.
Absolutely.
It's a business. So many lawyers don't look at it as a business. Even people I've had in my year, practicing 20 years, I've been around people who say, well, why are you treating this like a business? Because it is. And people lose sight of that. They will burn through your money. They will be on your clock and and not do anything. And when you realize someone is burning your money, get rid of them. Well, try to change the behavior. If not, you got to shift to a person who won't do that. And if you have people in your practice who are not helping you make money, they're sucking your money. So you need to get rid of them fast. But absolutely. Man, I segued all of that from Lakeisha's question. I used it all. I was a cash-based practice for about 15 years where I did not do loans. I was doing criminal defense. I had cash coming in, and I did not get loans for like 12, 15 years, really.
Okay. But also you made me think about something that I really want to share this with everybody. Make sure you develop a relationship with a banker as well. That was critical for me. When I started my practice, I actually worked during law school, and I worked at a bank. I worked with BBVA. So I literally left from BBVA and moved across the street to my own law practice. Having a relationship with a banker was vitally important. And also to kind of underscore another point that Eric made about underwriting for lawyers, I know when I started, BBVA had a line of credit. They would give a lawyer, doctor, or other professionals, they had a $25,000 line of credit they would give you just for having a law license. Now, that doesn't mean you need to go take a $25,000 line of credit or a loan or anything like that, but just know that, there are going to be options that will be available to you. But the most important thing is make sure that you have a relationship with a bank and with a banker who can kind of go to bat for you and help you get those things that you may not know about.
And that's a very important point, Chris. I know we're out of time. This is a great conversation. Get to know your banker and make sure your banker knows you. Because as you grow, you will need capital to do certain things. If you have a big 18-wheeler case and you need an expert that you just don't have the cash, you need $20,000 to retain certain experts, you will need that ability to get the money and to build your practice, whether it's buying an office space or investing or whatever, and make sure you have that relationship.
Absolutely. Well, it is now 1:01, and I know we've talked about being respectful of your mentor's time, so I'm not going to hold you any longer, Eric. But do you have any parting shots?
No, I could talk for another hour, but I know we're on a 1 hour CLE. This is great service that you're doing, Chris. I'm really proud of you and your law partner. And if anyone needs me, my cell phone number is 205-240-1236. Shoot me a text. Don't call, text me, okay? Because I got a 1-year-old running around here. But text me if you need help with anything. I'd love to help all of you, okay?
Well, thank you, Eric. We really appreciate your time today. Also, if you need anything from Burrell McCants, we handle civil rights, criminal defense, and employment cases. We can be reached at 205-202-5599, as if you hadn't seen it behind me all day during this CLE. But thanks again for being here. We really appreciate you all for coming to this episode of the Legal Linkup CLE series. And remember, we will be doing 2 more CLEs. We're doing free CLEs all during the month of July. They're going to be every Friday at 12 o'clock. So make sure you look out for the next invite, and make sure you tell your friends as well. So that's all we have. Thanks for being here. We really appreciate it. Everyone have a great day and a great weekend.
On behalf of Burrell and McCants, thank you for joining us for the second installment of the Legal Linkup Summer CLE series. Please make plans to join us next Friday, July 23rd at noon Central Time for the third installment. Can they do that? Employment and workers' comp cases. For those of you who want CLE credit, please click on the link that will appear once this webinar has ended. This will open the program evaluation. Please complete the information requested on the form and submit to receive your CLE credit. Thank you and have a great rest of your day.